and they all couldn't give me a very clear distinction of what it is, which is kind of sad in sports, right? One of the most honorable things that we're supposed to teach athletes is honor, right? Firefighters know what it is. Special force operators know what it is, right? So, I mean, the distinction I was taught, honor, is living up to a code of behavior in which the concerns of the group come before selfish concerns. Let's start recognizing that and playing with it. Let's start teaching it. Let's start getting guys to display it, right? See what happens. That's a behavior that other people want to be around. Other people build trust when that happens. But most people don't have a pure distinction of honor. So how can you really teach it? How can you really plaster that on in someone's mind over and over and over again to where it becomes second nature, that they know what it is and they recognize it in somebody, and they recognize when someone's not doing it on the team and they correct it, right? These are the things where we can influence wins and influence behaviors and influence the quality of someone's life for a lifetime. This is what sports is supposed to do. Like I said, 30 million kids playing recreational sports. You're either a transactional coach, what can you do for me, quid pro quo, right? or you're a transformational coach.
That was Scot Prohaska, and you're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast. It's awesome to have you guys here. You're in for a really good show. We've spoken quite a few episodes on this show, especially recent ones. I'm probably going to keep saying this in these pre-rolls. It is the theme is just getting outside the box, moving beyond just physical qualities. If you are a person who trains athletes for physical qualities, and getting into the mental side, the emotional side, the creative side, and innovative side, the decision-making side, trying to move into a multidisciplinary approach to making the experience for the athlete the best it can be to bring them to their highest potential. Scot Prohaska is someone you may have not heard of in the online space. He may not be someone who shows up when you're flipping through your Instagram feed, but he is one of the wisest and most holistic coaches that I know. Scot is distinguished as a nationally recognized sports and executive performance consultant. He runs his performance center out of Los Angeles, California, and he works with a wide range of athletes, from scholastic all the way to professionals of the highest levels. Scot is a guy who has traveled the globe studying with leading experts in not just physical preparation, but many realms of athletic and human performance, including ex-phys, kinesiology, biomechanics, strength, nutrition, mental training, emotional training, leadership, and many other elements, as we'll get into today. Through Scot's years of coaching, he's learned and learning from these leaders, he's developed the 6 lanes of high performance. These 6 lanes, which are psychology, sensory motor, technical, tactical, physical prep, recovery and restoration. These 6 lanes, to me, are something that is such, it'll change your life as a coach. In talking with Scot, it makes me so excited to train people. Not that I wasn't already, I always am, but just you think of all the ways that your own impact as a coach can have an impact in the life of a young or older seasoned athlete. It's such an opportunity. It's such a privilege to be able to coach and work with athletes. And so I'm really excited to bring you this show with Scot. In addition to him talking about his background, the six lanes and how he came up with that, and his mentors and his experiences and why that's important, he's also going to talk about 11 leadership tenets that he teaches. You just heard one in the pre-roll there, honor, that get woven into every session that athletes are participating in with Scot. So this is an episode that gives me an opportunity to become much more than just an instructor of weights or skills or whatever your coaching position is. To me, this show isn't just about strength coaching. It's about coaching. It's about an opportunity to change lives. And Scot is an epitome of a person that we want to be listening to when it comes to that opportunity. So let's get on to it. Episode 214 with Scot Prohaska. Scot, welcome to the show. It's awesome to have you here, man.
Thanks, Joel. It's something that myself and my whole team, we listen to you guys all the time on Just Fly Sports. It's kind of a requirement for anybody that works for me to listen to your podcast. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, it's awesome to have you here. I mean, I know every time we've talked, or I've just more and more intrigued by what you do, because I know you're not like you're not all over social media. You're not you're but in talk I'm just like I am so I wish before I left California I could have stopped by. And I'm
Yeah.
really excited to chat about your insight into your system and how. So before we get into that, I'm curious too, like, and I like getting into this especially for people who see things in such an expansive way. But what was your gateway into coaching? Like, what got you interested in it? And then what were some really big milestones in changing the way that you thought about your process?
Yeah. Well, first, quick Reader's Digest version is I was a pretty good athlete growing up back east, right? And had scholarship offers and was fortunate enough when I was in eighth grade to walk into the YMCA, find the little dungeon part where all the tough guys and athletes were working out. And in there was a level 5 Olympic lifting coach and saw me with my little fitness books working out and said, "Hey kid, come here. I want to teach you how to really train." And when I was in eighth grade, I started training with professional athletes, Olympic athletes, learning how to snatch, clean, squat, sprint, hurdles, everything. So it was a amazing experience for a young kid to be pulled into that kind of culture right away and be taught properly. And then after college, went into finance world and business world and was kind of miserable. But I was always getting fathers and guys I played college football with calling me going, "Scotty, you knew so much about this stuff. Help me. I got a contract, or my kid's close to a scholarship. What can you teach them?" And I was doing it on the side and just fell in love with it and started growing it and saw a business opportunity, and then got called by a sports med guy in Toronto, liked the work I was doing, and went up there and started running his clinic and working with NHL guys and Canadian Olympians and stuff like that. And it just grew from there. It was kind of an organic way of loving it as a young kid, being lucky to have someone mentor me, and saw how it changed my life, and then fell into coaching.
I feel like you're not for some reason the finance, and I didn't like it, and then I got into sports performance. I've heard that story before. I know Max Shank was on here had that too, and I feel like I've heard others. Maybe do you feel like that like systems kind of thinking, or do you think there's any thinking in finance that is helpful for sports? Or is it just maybe coincidental with you? Or I don't know. I'm just curious.
I think it's for competitors. We always want to look at measures of success, and that's kind of a natural thing until you realize, I work hard to get something, and I realize I don't like it when I get here. That might not be success. But I think finance is a challenging, competitive field, and with detail and all these little nuances you can take, and I think that attracts people to feel that want to feel successful, right? And then you realize you're sitting in front of a computer all day long.
Yeah, I could totally see that. Yeah, that makes sense. So you're speaking of success too. That's like the first, I guess, official question I had, and I guess I just felt like starting with this rather than jumping right into the 6 lanes. But what does success in sport mean to you? Yeah.
So what it used to mean, right? So we all have these objectives and goals, right? And we think that's success. When we meet that, we're going to be successful and feel successful. Yet what happens when you meet it? How long does that last? For me, it lasted maybe 5 minutes. And then I'm setting the next stuff and saying, okay, going to start grinding now for the next goal, and realizing that my daily experience wasn't great. So success for me in sport or any endeavor is your daily optimized experience that's sustainable over time. So if you're an athlete, if you're a business guy, whatever it is, if you're living your dream, you're loving your days, you're making a contribution, feeling fulfilled, then that's success to me. And so that's how I look at it. When I get an athlete that wants the scholarship, but he's loving the training, loving where he is in high school, having great teammates, great relationships, performing on the field every day, he's not future, obsessed all the time. That's successful to me.
Yeah, it makes sense with the process, right? Like so often we just look at just what's the goal, win the conference or get the scholarship, but then what? I mean, eventually there's, I think, an emptiness. I mean, it's nice to get scholarships for sure, but at some point you get to the top and maybe you realize you were on the wrong ladder or something, but it's
where I've dealt with it the most is Olympic athletes. After an Olympic year, wow, they struggle mightily. They struggle with purpose, with focus, with what it all means. A the disappointment of even if they got a medal, it didn't feel as good as they thought. But the daily optimal experience, if they're loving their life and the training, they're enjoying it, they're enjoying the relationships they're building, that seems to be sustainable to me.
Yeah, I like the idea. I've always liked the thought or the word or the phrase maybe, today is the best day of your life. And you think what if to make today the best training session you've ever had or the best day you've ever had as an athlete, things like that. I mean, I guess I think about, there's certainly my own memories of things in my own athletic career, setting my personal bests and things like I remember those, but just as well, I remember like a funny thing that happened in practice one time, that's just as great, or, stuff like that. It's all good. It's all part of that process. And the friends you had and the training partners and the gnarly workouts, maybe there was a little stupidity even in them, but there was still something memorable about those. And
the two sides of the coin that I'm always looking at is purpose. Are you very aligned in your purpose? And the other side is connection. Are you connecting to coaches? Are you connecting to teammates? Are you connecting to therapists? Everybody that's on your team and around. If you're having great relationships and connecting, you're going to feel pretty good about your days.
Yeah. And I know that's something that you had said too. I hope this isn't off the rails a little bit, but like in how many people we connect with on a given day. And you had given me an anecdote with like Elon Musk or someone who's like a homeless or something like that. Like how many people are you reaching? I thought that was really interesting. And I'm sure we'll talk about that maybe when we get into some of the lanes and things like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Who, Scott, I mean, of course, across your growth as a coach, I'm sure as we get to like some of the lanes and the way you see it, I mean, obviously, I'll probably be like, well, who are your mentors and all these things? It probably is. It's tough. You probably have so many. It's probably tough to throw them all out there now. But what were some like real big milestones or moments where you're like, wow, I really need to make this thing a part of my process, or this person really changed my life and views as a coach? Like, what are some moments that you had or critical points along the way that formed you in who you are right now in your coaching process?
Yeah, I think if you go lane by lane, it kind of evolves like that. And when it came to the physical lane, early in my career, a young buck trying to learn everything, Charles Bullock was a huge influence as to the detail and the planning and the processing and the, all the loading parameters that you could do to get an athlete strong and powerful and muscular and all those types of things. And then you grow from there and you start reading Russian research and, all the guys, Medvedev and all these guys, you start learning all that stuff as well. So the physical lane, it started there with him, especially being from Northeast and living in Canada. A lot of my adult life, that was early adult life. That was a big influence there. It took you down a bunch of different rabbit holes as well, right? When you hear him talk about somebody, or you go research a Russian guy or a French guy or something like that. So that's how that started. The psychology lane number one, honestly, it was amazing how many sports psychologist friends I have, but I've always struggled with how long that process was. I've always said sometimes it's just psychology with the word sport in front of it. And it's like a 3-year process talking about your mom and your upbringing. I'm like, I don't have that time. I don't have that much time. I got to get this guy ready for a world event in 6 months or something. And really where I found immense value is when you look at special forces, the commanders, though, not so much the soldiers. And those guys have value as well. But when you look at a guy like Larry Yatch, who's been a huge influence in my life, naval officer, Navy SEAL commander of SEAL Team 3, unbelievable what he understands about psychology and performance and connection and purpose and how to align all those things in anybody and behavior change. This guy is a master at stuff like that. And so to study him, and I actually learned from an Israeli guy, I can't say his name, but Israeli special ops guy taught me a lot about that stuff, self-regulation, things like that as well. But Larry Yatch has been a huge influence on my career when it came to the psychology lane of things.
Yeah, special
technical
forces.
Yeah, you can go technical as well and look at, Adrian Barr and Dan Paff and, Dr. Yesus and all these guys that biomechanics guys and study the technical aspects of a certain movement or a certain sport you want to study. So it's, I like the 6 lanes because it allows you to go investigate people that are at the top of that field and form your own opinion on who you like and how they teach. And but I guarantee you, when you go research it, you're going to find similarities. The top people in those fields at that area: strategic planning, recovery, physical, all those lanes. So
I love it. I like the special forces. I would love to get into that more as my career evolves. I know the only real experience I have with that is I used to listen to a lot more audiobooks back in the day. And one, before I got, this was before this podcast started and back before I had kids and when I had a little more time in my life for probably more leisureful things, I guess, but it was like a Delta Force. It was a audiobook on Delta Force, and they're talking about just live fire drills and like double tap on like the trigger, and like it's like, man, if live ammo is flying around, like this is just crazy, and you have to be so on point with your team and your and your leadership and who you are. And then reading like Jocko Willick's stuff too, it's man, I mean the stakes are the ultimate, right? And it's I couldn't think from leadership and like you said, self-regulation. Who better to learn from? I think that's awesome.
That's where it starts, right? It starts with self-regulation in 3 domains, right? The physical. These are the guys that can push themselves physically, the ultra marathoners, the whatever, right? The guys that have broken legs still playing in the NFL Super Bowl. Like those guys are physical. They can self-regulate immensely, right? And then there's the mental. Can they stay focused? Can they stay on point? Can they stay in the right mindset for the task at hand? And then there's the emotional. Can they shift in the right emotion at the right time to accomplish what they need to accomplish and stay in that emotion as long as they need to, right? When you can self-regulate in all those 3, that is incredible performance, because that leads to what? It leads to behaviors. And that's, the 6 lanes is based on behaviors. And when you can change somebody's an athlete's behaviors, you're going to see a lot of things change physically, technically as well.
Yeah. So with the 6 lanes, we could probably talk about each lane for a whole show. So however many we get through, we could save the rest for part 2 or whatever down the road. But Scott, tell me about your 6 lanes, because I know you're alluding to them. So let's get to this and let's go through the system. Maybe first tell me when you actually put all this down on paper. It's like here it is, and then tell me a little bit about the 6 lanes.
Yeah, I start hearing a little bit about this, guys posting and talking about these different lanes. And so it's been around. It's not something I purely invented, but it was the late 90s when I started looking into this stuff. It was when and it really came from me thinking I was really good at physical preparation and watching athletes still fail. So I learned from the failures. When I had an Olympic hopeful in the bobsled team that didn't quite make the team, but they were more explosive and faster on the 30 meters than anybody. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So just started investigating all these different areas and then looking at the guys that did succeed, a Pierre Luders, and talking to him about, no, I study psychology, Scotty. What? I how much time he spends in sensory motor, working on his vision and visualization. I'm like, oh, what? So it was always looking at the failures and comparing to the world leaders and saying, what are the differences? Because it wasn't physical all the time. And that's what led me to kind of go through, okay, lane number 1, and these are in order of importance, the way I see it, is psychology. The development of intellect, emotions, and social skills, right? And the ability to put those into action on the field with the greatest intensity, right? That is key. Then sensory motor, right? The ability of the athlete to use vision, perceptual, and reaction skills to make quick and accurate decisions during the play. Lane number 3, technical. The intensity, repeatability, accuracy in which specific skills are performed on the field or the court or the pitch, whatever, right? Tactical, strategical lane. Okay, that's the ability of your team or yourself to put technical skills into use and equip yourself with the greatest likelihood of success against opposing players or teams. Physical preparation, development of the proper fitness abilities that underpin the ability to express those abilities on the field of play with maximum intensity and repeatability. And then recovery and restoration, the ability of the athlete to reset and become ready to compete sooner than later. All things that need to be checked and make sure you have a certain level of competency in each one if you want a robust athlete.
Yeah, I love it. And that's a big reason. I mean, all of this is a huge reason I wanted to have this chat today. And it's amazing. You start to hear themes. The more great
Yep.
coaches you talk to, you start to see these themes. Not even in just pure athletic performance. I did a podcast with Logan Christopher after we did a little garage gym strongman training session, and he has a pyramid of strength just for strength training, just purely strength training.
Right.
And even just for purely strength training, it's still, the bottom is still mental. It's still,
Yeah.
what does the mind, where is the intention? Where is the belief
That's right.
systems and everything
Yeah.
there? And then it builds up from the bottom. And I think he said he had made that flip flop. Like the bottom was the training for a little while. And then he's like, I'll put training the second to the bottom. It starts with beliefs.
Well, most of what I have done my whole career is physical preparation. I put that number 5 out of 6. So what does that tell you? I'm probably telling the truth, right? If I ranked myself that low, my importance. But I think the key is to take each one of these lanes and find out who you feel the expert is at the end of that, and go study with that guy. Go study that or those couple people. Psychology when it comes to special operators, lieutenant colonels, commanders of special forces, whether it be SEAL teams, Delta Force teams, Israeli Special Forces teams. See if you can get to learn some of that stuff from these guys. Same with tactical, strategical planning. These guys are great at that too. You look at a high school football coach and you think he's good at, or even an NFL coach or NHL coach, you think they're good at strategical, tactical planning. Well, let's compare them to a 4-star general and let's see how good they are. Like that's the kind of thing you want to compare to find the best and then start learning what you can in each one of those lanes and how you can apply it to your athletes.
Yeah, it seems to me that even if you took this out of, I guess, strength and conditioning or athletic preparation as a field, and you just pasted this on, hey, head football coach in the NFL or something, what I'm saying? Like, it would be pretty much the same thing in terms of the development. It's very universal.
Yes. Yeah. And the interesting thing is when you look at the history of championships at high level sports, NCAA, Olympic, professional, a lot of coaches are winning a lot, right? You see the same coaches seem to be at the top all the time, and they're probably pretty good at 2 of the 6 lanes.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how lacking some of the other guys are in all of them, right? Whether they're struggling or just inconsistent. So
I think a good example too would be like, and again, I'm probably going to say this was a quote that was a couple podcasts ago, and I'm probably going to repeat it on a bunch of them, but just because I like it. But it was Corey Schlesinger talking about this quote of, he's like, I saw squats go up, I saw force plate numbers go up, I did not see wins go up.
Yeah.
I think we have to be able to put our ego to the side and just be like, okay, like, well, what other things are really at play here? And I think we would all, like, in Division 3, I worked in Division 3 for a while. Yeah. And I think, and in Division 3, a lot of times, like if it's a football team, you got a football assistant coach running the strength program, or the basketball team. And I don't think that, and so in a lot of those cases, a lot of those teams, even if the strength and conditioning program is quote unquote, not great or something, the team could still go out and thrash everybody. They're doing the basics. They're doing the 80-20. They're doing 80% of probably what they're going to get out of the weight room. Maybe they're missing the last 20, but they're getting everything. They're all those lanes that come before it, they're dialed in on. And
that's a key thing, because I think as whether we're physical preparation, strength conditioning, we do want to influence wins, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what influences that? Well, psychology and behaviors form a better team. Your team will function better when they communicate better, when they're aligned in their purposes and their roles. That's what all this does. A special operator commander can't afford to lose. They're in the worst environments, jobs given to them that other people were told they're impossible, right? And their competition isn't trying to score on them, it's trying to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't lose. So for them to form a team and the physical preparation, when you get that right with this other stuff, then I think you're going to influence wins. I guarantee it. So really, especially at the youth level or the high school level, when you can start putting this stuff in. Let's be real. Sports engage more individuals and more families and more communities in a shared experience than any other single cultural activity, organization, or religion in America. Sports. Right? 30 million kids play recreational sports. 10 million play interscholastical. 40 to 80 million parents invested in their children's sports. 5 million coaches. Let's be more transformable coaches. Let's change kids' lives for the better instead of being a transactional coach, right? And if you want to do that as a strength conditioning guy, you can do that. If you want to learn behavior change, psychology, sensory motor, all this stuff, you can make a big influence on a lifetime influence forever, that you can influence someone's life. It happened to me, back in the 80s, 70s, 80s. This is when it happened to me. And it changed, and I've influenced a bunch of people because of it. So that's why I'm saying, like, we keep going down the rabbit hole of the physical preparation. Let's expand a little bit. Let's find resources to learn about psychology. Let's look up guys like Larry Atch and guys like that know how to coach teams to unbelievable performances and function levels. And I think we can influence that, being a strength conditioning or physical prep guy. We can influence these other lanes. We can learn technical. Look at all the stuff you learned from Adrian Barr, right? And in the technical area. So changed you, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we can learn technical stuff. We can learn how the hips rotate and the shoulders rotate in a baseball swing. If I'm a strength conditioning guy, it shouldn't be just about the barbell. This is what I want to see in the industry, like us become way more well-rounded and influential as a coach, not just strength conditioning coach.
I wanted to take a quick break from the show to share with you a little bit about what our sponsor, simplyfaster.com, now has available in their store. You hear me mention in the outro of the show all the time about the free lap timing system in the K-Box, which I have and use regularly. But today I wanted to share a little bit more about the bar speed monitoring units that Simply Faster has, which is the GymAware and the new portable Flex unit. So let me start with the GymAware. I mention it regularly on the show. It's been referred to as the Cadillac of bar speed monitors. Carl Valley calls it a lab inside a lunchbox, as the readings you get out of the GymAware go well beyond typical concentric or just up phase of the lift velocities. Rather, you can measure the entire shape of the barbell lift in terms of eccentric velocity, range of motion, and total work done. Total work being awesome, by the way, especially like comparing a long-armed bench presser or a 6'10 squatter versus a 5'11 point guard. So you're getting all these extra metrics that you're not getting on other units. It's perfect for teams wanting to manage the weight room, and the data synchronizes to software platforms such as CoachMe Plus, Team Builder, and Athlete Monitoring. So new to the store is the Flex, which is the ultra-portable and lower-price travel version of the coach's favorite GymAware. So just like the GymAware, the Flex measures the shape of each rep, range of motion, total work done, eccentric dynamics. So for this and the GymAware, this is the advantage that a force plate would have over just knowing how high you jumped. You're getting many other metrics and information that go into this unit of work. Compared to similar portable bar speed monitors, this unit gets the entire rep rather than a fraction. So you have here two awesome tools. And if you're interested in upping your game in the velocity-based training and bar speed world, I would definitely recommend heading to the store at simplyfaster.com and checking into these two units. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, I think about that. And for a university strength coach now, or to work in the pros, I guess, or, it's like you kind of need 6 years of school, right? Bachelor's and master's. And I just think about, if you had 6 years to learn about all this stuff,
yeah,
you're going to tap out in just, if I was just to learn about barbells and dumbbells and strength, I'm probably going to start tapping out after about a year or two in terms of my max. Maybe I'll learn a little bit more each year, but it's gonna, what do you call it? Like, what you get for what you're putting in. There's a shorter way of saying that. It's not as, and it's like, okay, well, now if I start studying psychology, now my return is huge. Or I start studying technical, my return is huge, versus getting to the point of hair splitting in just one lane,
That's right.
And
that's exactly what I've seen in my career. And trust me, I fell down that rabbit hole deep in my early parts of my career. Force plate this and, analyzing this and looking at this and different protocols with the barbell. It's still great. I still love it. And I still think it makes a difference, right? When someone can do that stuff well. But you want to influence wins. You want to influence relationships. You want to influence someone's experience forever in sports, right? Where kids aren't feeling left out or feeling like they didn't reach their potential. I think it's interesting to me. It's fascinating to me. So I assume that other guys that are strength conditioning guys would probably find most of it fascinating as well.
Yeah, I know I do. I mean, for me, it's been I used to not, when I was 25, to me, it was just all about the training. How can what arrangement of strength and plyos and sprints is going to get me the best outputs? And I would hear people say things like, "Oh, that guy didn't do good that race because he quit, at this mile or something." And I would think, "Oh, it's done. It was just the training. I never saw that. Like, I never could see beyond just the training. And then the more elite coaches that I started to work with as I progressed forward, the more elite athletes, especially, like, I know we've both worked with Olympians, and you see the difference in the mind of an Olympian and the mind of someone who just can't break through. And it's so substantial. And I just,
And that's it. If the one thing that I'm close to having a little bit of a curriculum for people to have, and probably by the end of the year, I'll have this dialed up with naval officers and teaching it with us and things like that. So it's we call them leadership tenets, but they're behaviors, right? And courage, honor, respect, responsibility, communication, confidence, perseverance, innovation, ambition. Well, let's teach kids this. Let's teach young athletes. Remember, I have professional NFL, NHL athletes that are making, $10 million a year. They're 25 years old, 26 years old, 27 years old. By life standards, that's young. And they don't have all this stuff locked up. But this is how this works. These are all behaviors, right? And character behaviors. You self-regulate so you can express these behaviors. You express these behaviors, people are going to want to follow you. People are going to want to team with you. People are going to want to have you as a teammate 100%. You want success? Team well. Team well. Have a high functioning team around you, with you, that's deeply connected and on purpose. All right. With these types of behaviors, everybody displaying these types of behaviors, watch what happens. This is a great experience. This is success now. So to teach these things while you're training, and it can happen concurrently. When you're teaching weight training, you're going to teach perseverance. You're going to teach ambition. You're going to teach courage. You're going to teach honor. You're going to teach all these things. And the behaviors lead to a higher functioning team. And a higher functioning team leads to success every time.
I think that so many of us who have spent time with athletes in the weight room, we see that. I don't think there's that many people who've actually taken the time to say, here, these are the leadership traits that can be built up. I think we look at it, we're like, discipline and hard work and culture. And then, absolutely. I mean, I've realized as much as anything in the teams I've worked with that, I work with individual sports and team sports, and especially for the team sport, and it's important for individual too, absolutely, but especially for the team sports, that cultural element and trying to get people to foster situations where people actually have to communicate in the weight room and create circuit training where communication is required. And like, there's a lot more than just the physical training. That's developed me as a coach tremendously. And if I end up coaching team sports someday, which I hope to, that also will go a long way. And
what if, which is possible, the things that were taught to me by guys like Larry Atch, right? What if us as a strength community had a universal distinction for courage, a universal distinction for honor, and how to teach that? So we're all taught, we're all on the same page, and then we can get creative and share successes and failures with each other. Instead of, I've done it. I've asked 50 athletes and coaches what honor is, and they all couldn't give me a very clear distinction of what it is, which is kind of sad in sports, right? One of the most honorable things that we're supposed to teach athletes is honor, right? Firefighters know what it is. Special force operators know what it is, right? So, I mean, the distinction I was taught, honor, is living up to a code of behavior in which the concerns of the group come before selfish concerns. Let's start recognizing that and playing with it. Let's start teaching it. Let's start getting guys to display it, right? See what happens. That's a behavior that other people want to be around. Other people build trust when that happens. But most people don't have a pure distinction of honor. So how can you really teach it? How can you really plaster that in someone's mind over and over and over again to where it becomes second nature, that they know what it is and they recognize it in somebody, and they recognize when someone's not doing it on the team and they correct it, right? These are the things where we can influence wins and influence behaviors and influence the quality of someone's life for a lifetime. This is what sports is supposed to do. Like I said, 30 million kids playing recreational sports. You're either a transactional coach, what can you do for me, quid pro quo, right? Or you're a transformational coach, where you're going to transform someone's life with sports. That's where it led me. I used to be a transactional coach. I'll get your 40 down, pay me. I'll get your vertical up, pay me, right? But wasn't fulfilling for me, and I didn't see it as a sustainable way of life I wanted to have. So
it kind of reminds me of what we were talking about right at the beginning, just like the goal versus the process. At the end of the day, the process of just bringing out the best in athletes that's the most enjoyable thing.
Yes.
So with all this, you have these lanes and these leadership traits.
Yeah.
How does this shake out? Is it a little bit more is it systematic at all? Is it, if someone comes in, it's like, are we assessing your lanes? Are they aware of the traits? Are they, is it written? How does it shake out? If I walk in your facility, what would I expect in that regards?
Yeah. The first thing is awareness, right? I'm going to teach you these. We're going to be aware of it. This is a call out to everybody to help me develop a testing to test all these things. Okay. Because obviously physical and technical, we could probably test those a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
And even recovery wise, we're getting good at that. So we use all the tools we have in these other lanes. Right. But I'm in process working with some really, high end people how to test psychology. Now, sensory motor, I'm fortunate in my facility as a partner of mine is Ryan Harrison, Dr. Bill Harrison's son, who, when it comes to visual, perceptual, sensory motor stuff, these guys are off the charts. They're the leaders in the field when it comes to it. So I'm fortunate to have those guys, partnered up with me in the same facility. So that's always fun to learn what they can do with visual, perceptual stuff. But yeah, we're going to first educate you on all these things. And then the way I test some of this, especially the psychological, sensory motor, all this stuff is I'm going to ask you where you feel your weaknesses and your strengths are. I'm going to ask your coach what he feels. I'm going to ask your dad or your mom, I'm going to get a feel for where your strengths and weaknesses are in that. And that's your code, right? And early off season, we work on your weaknesses. That's my plan. When we start getting closer to camps, tryouts, seasons, we work on your strengths. That's what got you there. That's the stuff that you're made of, that you're good at. And I want confidence high when you're going into camps and seasons and stuff like that. So we have a layout of, hey, if we identify your 3 weaknesses, whether maybe technically you're not good, maybe you don't recover well, and maybe, your psychology is all over the place. Well, those are the 3 we're going to focus on. And it's vertical integration. We're going to work on all of them, but those are going to be the focus early off season. Once we hit the midway point in the off season, we're probably going to start working on your strengths a little more. And everybody gets excited about that. And we're gonna teach those things and what we know about them. And if it's something I can't influence, I'm gonna call the expert at the end of that lane and say, I need help. I'm stuck here. And they usually get on the phone with me and help me out a little bit on how to move the needle more. So, but everybody's got their own unique code, right? Everybody could start. One guy starts and his code to work on is a 3-6-1. And someone else comes in and they got to work on 2-5-3. In that order. That's kind of what their focus is. I want them to learn about those lanes and where their weaknesses are. And that way they go into the next season with less of a weakness and their strengths are greater.
So if I'm coming in and I'll just use me as a high school, I'm going to go back and step into Joel as a high school basketball player. I was just talking about this in another podcast that'll be out.
Yeah.
But my absolutely weak in lane 1, terrible. Like the psychology, everything to do with that, terrible. Physical, fine. For high school basketball, I was great. No problem. Big engine, athletic. And then, technical, meh. So I would have, recovery was good. So for me, it was like maybe lane 1, 2, and 3. I need a lot of work. So if I come in and it's the off season, what's the session looking at? How is it altered for me who comes in with pretty good physical abilities, but I need to work on those other elements?
So typically we are a gym, right? We do train people.
Yeah, of course.
And I'm going to look at athleticism, power, how you move, injury profiles. That's important. That's what I do as well. But you're going to spend 15 minutes a couple days a week addressing one of those things. And you're going to get tons of homework and maybe another session in it if you need to, right? Or connected with somebody that can help you. So we may teach courage for the first month for 15 minutes at the end of each session. You may work on that. The next month, we'll probably teach honor. The next month, we'll teach responsibility. We'll teach respect the next month. So every month, you're going to get a deep, deep understanding of self-regulation and behaviors and connection, things like that. You're going to learn these things. So some of these leadership tenets are tied to self-regulation. Some are tied to like perseverance. That's tied to self-regulation, right? Where some of it is tied to team, to connection with people, courage, honor. Those are connected to, to team and connecting with teammates and coaches and things like that. So you're going to learn that stuff every week for a month. And where we assess how much you've learned and if we need to keep going with it. But typically I like to get through, the program that we're building is going to be 11 months to cover all these things. Innovation, ambition. How do you build ambition in an athlete that's talented but doesn't have a lot of drive, right? Like you can build those things. You can, and that's what you would get on those areas. You might spend 15 minutes before the session working with Ryan Harrison on visual perceptual stuff before the session. I may have you do it during the session after just squats and weight, your heart rate's up, go do some visual stuff now, see how you do. So it's always blended in before, during, or after a little bit, each one of these lanes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
If I was a tennis player, I play tennis recreationally, but not competitively. But if I was a tennis player, I think I'd be seeing Dr. Harrison every day.
Remarkable. Unfortunately, we lost him 2 years ago, right? Or a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. But his son, Ryan, is just remarkable when it comes to carrying on his legacy and the practical application of what Doc Harrison knew is incredible what Ryan can do. And the tools he has, he's always coming up with new data from the military that he comes up with and new testing protocols. But yeah, this guy, I mean, remarkable. Jeff Moyer talks about how he sent a tennis player to Ryan Harrison, who didn't even see the person move, tested his eyes and says, "You struggle with the backhand." Yeah. And people are like, what? Like he's that good with visual spatial stuff and what it means and how to test it. And so, yeah, I'm fortunate to learn from him every day. But yeah, that's tennis for sure, baseball for sure, hockey goalie for sure. Yeah. You're going to deal with that stuff a lot. So
no doubt. I was back to what you were saying about like the leadership tenets too. I was just thinking, I mean, you're 12 of them, right? I mean, yeah. In some way you could go through like, one a month if you had a whole year, but I was just thinking like a real perceptive coach, be it strength coach, team coach, could probably get an idea of maybe what some of those lower hanging elements were. Like this team needs to learn this.
Yes.
And how far could that? Because not only was it Bill Walsh who wrote the book "The Score Takes Care of Itself"? I think.
I'm not sure. Yeah,
I'll have to look that up and fact check myself. But I love that idea. Like, look, if we take care of all this stuff and we embrace the process and we learn leadership and teamwork and cohesion and beliefs and everything, the score is eventually going to take care of itself, whatever the outcome is meant to be, and it's probably going to be good. You said, but I want to ask you too, before we get any further with this, I know there's a stat, like a very high percentage of your athletes have gone on to have leadership positions, right? Be it like college or beyond or something like that.
Yeah, it was actually last year, one of the fathers, I kind of took over and mentored a local high school football team that was struggling 7 years ago when I took them over, a famous high school football team, modern day high school. And, kind of brought someone asked me, kind of challenged me, would this stuff work at the high school level? And I'm like, yeah, sure it would. And I'm pretty sure. and they go, well, kind of let's test it. So I went there and helped turn their program around. Their coach was an amazing guy, super, still, in his 70s coaching, but still learning every day, is open to learning. And we turned it into a national powerhouse, right? They've got so many guys, playing at Alabama and Georgia and USC and stuff like that. And, but yeah, it's, what was the question you asked again?
Oh, I was just asking the percentage of people that, became leadership positions, I think.
Yeah. So one of the fathers had tracked, a lot of the athletes we've worked with. He's a big fan of what we do. His son trained with us in 6th grade, and he was a great connection kid. He made a lot of connections with volleyball players and U.S. figure skaters and NFL guys. And tracked a stat that said, Scott, over the last 5 years of the, few hundred amateur athletes you've worked with, we've calculated over 35% of them have been voted captains of their high school, college, or NFL, NHL teams. And I was like, whoa, really? I wasn't even aware of that, but it was definitely a proud kind of Papa moment for me when I heard that stat and then verified it as well, with some of them being multiple, like high school captain, college captain at Duke, at Boston University, at things like that. So that was good to hear.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, that's really, I think if you asked a strength coach, like why do we do what we do? Ultimately, I think we want to see our team win for sure, but it's so intricately tied with the development of the person. And so
yes,
that's such a stat that you love to see. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead if you were going to say something.
No, there comes a time where, in my career anyways, where the physical outputs were impressive. I've had a legit white guy run a 4.3 at the NFL Combine, right? And people are like, "Whoa! How does that happen?" Right? Yeah. It lost its luster a little bit if that's all I was doing. And then it was funny how when I started implementing this other stuff, not only were the relationships, my daily experiences, my fulfillment, the athlete's fulfillment and connections getting better as human beings, they were winning more.
Yeah.
They were performing better. So it just was a no-brainer from there for me to continue going down these roads. So
I love it. I was gonna say I would love to get into some of the leadership tenets, and we don't have to go through all of them, but I'm just curious of some examples. Like, let's say, I think a lot of coaches sometimes may fall into the point where they just feel like there's all sorts of things, right? But like, I've definitely seen the case where the team seemed to lack ambition.
Yes.
And just observing various teams throughout the year, whether I worked with them or didn't, and it's like, this team lacks ambition. And I think the coach would just go in and try to get everyone fired. And that's, it's good, get some energy in the room. But like, how would you go through the ambition category? Like, either be it an individual or a team. What are some key tenets?
Well, first, let's identify it, right? Ambition is it's a desire to change a current situation into a different future situation. So you have to identify what's the current situation we're in. How do you feel about it? Right. And then what's the future? It's basically a desired end state. Okay. How do you want to feel at the end of this? How do you want to feel in the future? What feeling do you want to feel? What feeling do you want to avoid? That's what invokes action, especially in younger athletes. The feeling, right? They want to avoid a feeling. They want to chase a feeling. And if you can be a leader that is a visionary leader and paints the picture of this is how it's going to feel when you guys are bonded together, winning championships, doing whatever, this is what it's going to feel like if you do it this way, that will start the process of ambition.
Interesting.
That will start. So it's basically a real evaluation of the feeling, the desire to change the current situation because of how you feel in the current situation, how you're going to feel if it goes this way versus how it's called the desired end state. Yeah. If you look into a lot of this stuff with Larry Atch, SEAL team leaders, boy, he goes deep into this stuff as well. Deep into it as well. Yeah. So that's how you build ambition in somebody.
Cool.
It's worked tremendously. You know where I've seen it work a lot? Basketball players. Some of these guys, they just want to play the sport and go shut it down after. And I've worked with a couple NBA guys that it's helped tremendously to build that ambition and work on kind of desired end state, right? How do you want to feel in the future? What do you want to avoid feeling in the future? And let's use that as the motivator of, what we do every day.
Yeah. I've heard too, if someone doesn't, to have a vision is so key. But if someone doesn't have a vision, you can ask, well, what's your night? What don't you want to feel? What's your nightmare?
Yeah.
And that could be powerful too.
Yeah. And I think it comes to, you also, when it comes to ambition, some of these things, there's subconscious things going on and conscious things going on. And with the subconscious changes, what you need to do is change the environment. That's the biggest hammer to change someone's behaviors when it comes to behavior change, is when it's a subconscious thing that's going on. They're not conscious of what they're doing, whether it's a lack of ambition or a lack of honor. You change the environment And that opens up the subconscious to learning new things. When the environment is really the trigger for these neural pathways to keep being activated. So change the environment, and then you can start building something new in that new environment.
Yeah, the environment the environment of the team and everything there has been learning more about that has been really substantial for me. I was going to ask you as well, like just going through some of these other ones, because I love hearing about these. I mean, it's just so valuable when you're in that team environment. But how about like bravery? How do you go through that?
Courage, right?
Or
so
courage, yeah.
and you can talk about different words for these, but they all kind of fall in these. So this is very interesting, right? So courage. What's the main thing you have to have for courage? It's the number one criteria that has to be there to be courageous. What is it? What do you think?
That's a good question. I should know this. I would say like self-belief or something, but I don't know.
Fear. It's fear.
Oh, interesting.
It's fear. You have to have fear to be courageous, right? It's not courageous for me to walk into a weight room, right? Because I have no fear walking into a weight room. Right. But if I feel immense fear, but I still make effective choices and take effective action in spite of it, that's courageous. That's courageous. So it's teaching, and that's kind of, the ability to influence change, right? Power. That's what power is, the ability to influence change. It has to go in a sequence. You have to learn something first. Then you have to practice it. Then you gain experience. That actually goes in 6 steps. You learn something. After you learn it, you've obtained some knowledge. What do you do with that knowledge? You have to practice it. After you practice it, you start developing a skill set. Now you take that skill set, you put it in experiences with some pressure. If you fail, you go back to practice. All right, because you couldn't perform it under pressure. If you don't fail, guess what happens? Confidence. You build confidence. That's what every athlete, every business guy, every father, every mother wants. They want confidence in what they're doing. So there's a sequence in how you build that. Unfortunately, in these times, there's no practice anymore. In high school, you go to modern day, every practice is a competition. You could lose your job in 3 plays. Drop 3 balls, good, you're out. Next guy's in. Another 4 stars right behind you. Mm-hmm. Same with college, same with pros. So the athletes that show perseverance, ambition, all these other things, they go out and work on their own. They go out and work extra all the time because they can play with things. How many times you hear about Jordan and Kobe and Tiger Woods playing around? That's their practice. Because practice, there can't be any fear of failure. You have to play with it and have fun with it. That's when you get good. That's when you build skill sets. But unfortunately, in today's climate, so competitive, practices are no longer practices. They are competitions almost all the time, which is experience and puts pressure on kids and athletes, and they lose confidence that way.
You're listening to the Just Fly Performance Podcast, brought to you by Simply Faster. Yeah, sometimes I wonder, you hear about just all the distinguishments between being a child in unstructured play, and then it starts to get more structured over time. And I know innovation was one of the tenets as well. And I've been talking with a lot of coaches about creativity. So yes. Would you say that today's modern practice structure and game structure, it almost facilitates a situation where you can't be as creative unless you go and do it on your own? Like you can't take the risk to be creative because you don't want to mess up and lose your job, so to speak, and lose your position.
100%. So innovation, right? So think about who's the great innovator of our time is, we'll look at Elon Musk right now, right? So tell me if this defines his level of innovation. Innovation is bringing into the possible that which is impossible, right? So to do that, you have to have the feeling that you could be creative, that you could fail, that you could try things, being innovative, that you're going to bring into the possible that which was impossible at one point. So, this is what we want to build in people. We want to build the innovation in them. And you're right, that's exactly what it is. It's the ability to be creative, but be creative into something that someone said was impossible. Like, okay, I'll show you. I'll show you. That's one of my favorite things when someone tells me it's impossible. I'm very innovative when it comes to stuff like that. But I'm not afraid to fail either. Some things I am, but not in that area. So
yeah, it makes me think of the Kevin Garnett, or I think it was Adidas, the impossible is nothing. And it's like, this is woven into our fabric, really. And
but it starts, you're exactly right that the practices now are so structured and scripted and planned, and coaches are so control centric instead of empowerment centric. They're going to have you do it their way every time. They're crushing innovation. Most championships, I mean, the fundamentals have to be there, but there's always those one or two uncoachable plays that you're like, whoa, how did he do that? Which inspires their teammates and changes the momentum and all the good things that happen with innovation. Got to have that.
How do you
got to have it? Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I totally interrupt you. This still was on my mind. Please go ahead, because I just had some. I was like, sorry, bad.
Yeah. So, I've been part of a group of guys that do a lot of work in the DR and Puerto Rico with baseball kids. You want to talk about innovation? You go down there and you watch these kids field balls on a rocky field with a milk carton on their hand, and I'm like, they are absolute wizards because they're able to innovate. And then they get, they get brought over here for scholarships or minor league stuff, and they're absolute wizards on the field because it's like, playing with all the best tools now, right? So I've been fortunate enough to be down there and work with some of these baseball guys and some of these therapists I know that are dedicating time down there and donating time actually to help out. And just remarkable the innovation that goes on in some of these, you play soccer in Brazil, like things like that. And you see it and you're like, whoa, this is what we're missing right here.
I think that's why the Rocky training montages are so like close to our heart, right? Because it's like, that's like innovation and use what you have.
Just think about all the leadership tenets he had, right? Ambition, innovation,
you go down,
perseverance, courage, drive, all those things, right? That's why it resonates with every athlete, right? Because we all feel that inside. We want all that stuff, right? And as coaches, I hope I can help, maybe empower a few coaches that are interested to learn this stuff and take it on to athletes as well. So
I think storytelling is so often the best way to communicate things. And just to say, watch, why do you love a Rocky movie? Because, and what I was going to ask you, and I think that's awesome, by the way. I was just thinking too, it's not up on the site yet, but there probably will be by the time this podcast goes out. Michael Zweifel of Building Better Athletes and Emergence wrote an article on, a very extensive article on perception, action, and agility. Yeah. And one of the pieces in the article that I really liked was he said for young athletes especially, he was just talking about constraints that the coach can control and change. And he said for young athletes, you want to change the equipment like often. And that totally reminds me of that, like that young player in the DR. I would, when I was there, I was in the DR one time when I was like 6, and I don't remember a lot from there because I was young, but one of the things I remember was kids playing stickball in the street, just a rock and a stick, basically. Like here's, a little equipment change, and you wonder why those players being good go so far beyond, I think, the typical X's and O's and technical. There's so much that goes into development from a young athlete that comes up, and I think we miss it because baseball is the most data-fied thing ever, right?
Yeah. I've found, this is my experience, probably my bias, even the athletes now that I've had that were NFL, NHL, NBA, that were the most athletic in multiple ways, just were happier. They just, they use their bodies in life. They're retired and still playing a little bit, pick up basketball, playing a little hockey, non-check. You know what I mean? They're just the guys that were the most athletic and built athleticism and all these, innovation and perception, reaction, sensory motor. They just are happier their whole lives. It seems like that to me anyway. That's been my experience.
I love that. I love how all this stuff, it's universal. And I think that's such a cool part about it. One thing I really wanted to add, this is where I was interrupting. So this is this is on my mind, but okay, like in the weight room, let's say I'm in a situation, well, whether the sport is like this or not, I would think, wow, if my sport coach is not being innovative, maybe I can offer some innovation in the weight. You know what I'm saying? Like, it can't really relate to sport as much. anyways, how do you show innovation or cultivate innovation in a weight room setting? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think, again, I think keeping it fresh, keeping them involved, right? Here's one thing I like to see in the weight room that I really preach in the weight room, especially when it comes to a team setting. I want to see these leadership tenets recognized and played with. I want someone to recognize a younger player showing honor. I want them to, recognize an older player showing courage. I think that's innovative in a way to have that type of communication, right? Like what's the number one thing that separates us from animals? One of the reasons why we have advanced so far. Animals communicate, but we have language, which is a precise tool for action, for coordinating action, right? I ask you to hand me a pen. How quick can you hand it to me? I ask a dog to hand me a pen. It might take 5 minutes, if he's trained well, right? So innovating, that's how I innovate in the weight room. Is one, I teach everything, right? That, like, if we're in a certain type of phase, I want them learning what it's about and learning about it. But let's play with some of these leadership tenets. Let's play with some of this self-regulation stuff. Let's play with this stuff in the weight room as well. Communication, language, all that stuff is a way to innovate in the weight room. It's not about screaming, hyping yourself up, slapping your training partner in the face. Let's recognize responsibility, confidence, perseverance. Let's see if we can recognize some of these things. If we're teaching it that month, let's see it in the weight room. Let's see it on the track. Let's see it in the conditioning drills. Let's see it, let's see you go express leadership, which is taking effective action and evoking effective action in others. And we talked about this a little earlier before we started recording. Is leadership as a trait. It's very interesting. It's really time and situation, right? Like if I'm going to do a podcast, guess who's going to lead that for me? You, right? If I'm going to work with an NHL guy, we're going to work together. Maybe I lead that. So it's time and situation, but it all starts kind of, you were right in a way. It all starts with what you were taught and believe earlier. Are you a leader? And everybody's a leader. Watch my 2-year-old son lead me and my wife around. Okay. He demands something, he gets it. Mm-hmm. But if we're all taught that, yes, there are situations I've seen you lead before, when you knew what to do, when you knew the best actions to take, when you were the most comfortable or the most confident. It might be as simple as math homework, and you're the star, you're the third string tight end, but you're great at math. Well, I bet you've led in that classroom. I guarantee you're a leader in some way. Once you get that belief that you're a leader, then you can start nurturing that out of people to take effective action and then evoke effective action in others. That's leadership. That's pure sense. And I that could be taught once somebody believes, yes, I'm a leader. I've shown it before. Maybe not at this particular time and situation, but other times and situations I'll lead. And once a kid believes that, you can build leadership in them.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I know we talked about this a little bit before the show. The idea of everyone being a leader. I think there's some people who are the idea of a born leader versus qualities that you can work on to become better. And I've certainly worked on it a lot myself, because I feel like leadership is something I've had to work on. It has not come naturally to me. And so that would have been really helpful for me, especially in my high school years, because I don't know that anyone ever really talked to me about that.
That's right. If someone in a positional authority that you looked up to would have told you, Joel, you're a leader. I'll show you 5 things I've seen this week in your comfort area where you took very effective action and you led people. Like I said, it could have been just purely jumping, could have been math homework, whatever it was, you led. And that just wakes something up inside a young person, a young athlete. Remember, when I say young athlete, I'm just not talking about youth or high school. A college Heisman Trophy winner is a young athlete to me. Right? The guy's 22 years old. Ask me what I was thinking when I was 22. Wasn't good.
That's awesome. I think, that just, if someone had said that to me, at 17 or something would have been life changing. Cause I've
Yeah.
never heard anything like that, and it
Yeah.
just, it makes such a difference. With communication, obviously that massive. How do you approach
Yeah.
that with what type of communication do you want to see? Let's say be it a group of people training or an
Yeah.
athlete or two. What are some
Yeah.
things you're looking for there, Scott?
So language, right? So my team in my facility, we have something that Larry Atch had given me called the distinctionary, right? It's our verbiage, our words, so we can quickly act when someone says, hey, go grab that. We know exactly what to do. Hey, I need help with this. So having a shared language, a shared background of experience, right? So a shared language. Why do Navy SEALs execute so fast? They communicate with their eyes. They have their own language, right? They have their own language, what a hand signal means. So when you develop and everybody is very clear on the language, you can execute actions so quickly and so precisely. So the first thing is to really identify your language for your community, your team, your business, whatever it is. You've got to have a shared background of experience of language. You all have to know what these words mean. So when we call on them, everybody takes the right actions. And then there's common concerns, right? Are we all concerned about the same things, which will lead to the right commitments and obligations? Are we all concerned about the exact same things here? And then back to the desired end state. Do we all want to feel the same things at the end of it, right? When I get in the weight room with a team and I take the time to say, hey, this is what I want everybody to feel at the end of this weight session.
Cool.
You guys want to feel that? They go, yeah. Yeah, we want to feel that. I go, okay, you guys be innovative and show me how you can make that happen now. And they'll do things I would have never done to feel that way. I'm like, wow, yeah, I feel good. I feel like we accomplished something. But so that's where that stuff comes in the weight room, right? So setting in the desired end state, how we want to feel at the end of this. We all have the same concerns. We all share the same language. You're going to function at a pretty high level.
I love that. I love that. Even just we had talked about ambition too. I feel like that. I feel that team that lacks ambition, that comes in and they just look a little apathetic. Yeah, just getting them to be on the same page with the communication, shared desire. How do you want to feel? It gives them something to latch onto. Like maybe they have nothing to latch onto mentally. Maybe they don't even know why they're there on the given day. It's like sometimes I think you have to put that vision in their head if they don't have one, or put a nightmare in their head. If you don't do this, or what don't you want to feel like when you leave?
Sure, we could feel like this if you go about it this way, or we could feel like this.
Yeah.
And if we share the language, if we have the same concerns, if we really all commit to feeling this way, let's see what happens. I'll leave it to you guys to go make that happen, and I'll guide you. I'll be a safety net if you need help. I'll be right here if you need help. That's when you start seeing ambition, innovation, all that stuff go crazy in the weight room. So it's fun. Makes it fun.
I imagine
you got to start making the weight room fun.
Yeah. 100%. My 8 years, I was a track coach for 6 and a full-time strength coach for 8. And there was just this transformation over the 8 of just making the weight room more fun, more autonomy for the athlete, more of a facilitator. It's just that direction. And you just see the change. You see the smiles on the faces, you see them. And then when you do get to like the typical, more the weights, so the traditional part's just better because they're just more motivated and excited about it.
Yeah, we've all been guilty of it, treating it so importantly, the data of it and the tracking of it, that we've lost, the fun of it, the innovation of it, the connection with the athletes and all the other things, right? So we got to make it fun again in there, and they have to be a big part of that process.
Yeah, they got to be. Yeah. I think more coaches, that's just something that's so powerful. Scott, I think that's about all. I know, it'd probably take us, again, 3 podcasts forward to go through all the lanes and all the, I mean, I want to go through all the leadership tenets now, but I wish I had time. I want to go like, wait, what about this one? What about this one?
Yeah, they're fun. They're fun to learn. And when you start recognizing them in every parts of your life and other people's lives, that's when you can start playing with them and helping people and helping yourself. It's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited to go through this list and
Yep.
continue to hopefully we can have these conversations, learn more from you. And I just think it's so important. So I know that's about all the time that I have for today on the show, but thank you so much, Scott. I really appreciate you taking the
No, of
time coming
course.
on.
It's always my pleasure to talk with Joel. It's always fun. We always go down these areas that are meaningful to me. So yeah, it's great.
That wraps up another show. Thanks for being here with us, everybody. If you enjoy what we're doing, the message of this show, the content, you can help us out by leaving us a rating or review on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever you're listening to spread the message and the content that we're trying to get out there and help other people find it. Also, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, simplyfaster.com, suppliers of high-end training technology. They've been a longtime sponsor to this show, great supporters of what we are doing. So be sure to support them. They have an awesome blog and a really cool online store with a really expansive array of sport tech, data collection, training tools, and a lot more. So be sure to check them out and support them. We'll be back next week with another great guest. Have a good one.